afternoon and welcome to Lisa Loves. I had fully intended to do this review in full face paint, but I can't find it. What can you do? You're just stuck with me and a bit of waffle for the next 5 or 10 minutes. Let's get on with it. So we are talking today about the new movie Lords of Chaos, which I finally got to see. I've been anticipating this one for many months. I was really excited to get to see it. So I sat down last night with my husband and we checked it out. So let's talk about Lords of Chaos. So Lords of Chaos was co-written and directed by Jonas Åkerlund. You may recognise that name. He is one of the founding members of Bathory, so he would have been around at that time. So he has worked on music videos for bands like Metallica. He also has worked with Prodigy in one of their music videos. So he's more used to probably the music video side of things to the movies, but how did he do here? So for a start, let's give you some of the main actors here and their characters. Obviously we have a much wider cast than this, but I'm just going to give you the main characters. So first off we have Rory Culkin, famously the brother of Macaulay. He plays Euronymous. We have Emery Cohen who plays Vorg, Jack Kilmer who plays Dead, Walter Skarsgård who plays Faust, Anthony De La Torre who plays Hellhammer, and Jonathan Barnwell who plays Necro Butcher. Now, I've obviously given them their stage names, I suppose, their performing names. I haven't given their full names there because, let's face it, we'd be here all day. Now, before I start into this review, Lords of Chaos is actually a music biopic. This does contain quite a lot of truth, quite a bit of fiction, but I am going to, in the duration of this review, discuss spoilers that happen within the movie. So if you don't know the story of the band Mayhem, you don't know what happens, I would suggest you to not watch this review because I am going to go into some spoiler territory later in the review. I just will say, if you're interested in my viewpoint, I really enjoyed the movie. I do feel it was very dark, very disturbing, very unsettling, but I feel that a lot of people who are well versed on their black metal, that know the history, that know the ins and outs, will be a bit put out by a lot of the inaccuracies within the movie. Personally, I'm not a fan of black metal. I do like the metal genre, but black metal was just never a thing for me. But I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. Most people I know are really enjoying it, but people that do err towards the black metal side of things and want their movies to be completely historically correct are getting a little bit narked about this. But I'll go into that later with regards to why that is. But I wouldn't advise you watch unless you want me to discuss spoilers. So let's get on with the story of Mayhem, Lords of Darkness.
Life was easy back then. It was all about having fun, drinking beer, playing hard and loud music.
So we start the movie in 1987. We're following Euronymous, who's pretty much the main protagonist within the movie. We follow his viewpoints, how he sees things, how everything affects him. He is only 17, he's from a very normal background, a very traditional background. So we see him dyeing his hair black, that thing that a lot of young metalers, a lot of young rockers out there like to do back in the day. And he is determined to get his band Mayhem into the limelight. He wants to be one of the first to create true Norwegian black metal. But in his quest and in the band's quest for publicity, which in itself seems to be against the ethos that the band stood for, kind of reminded me a lot of the whole Kurt Cobain and Nirvana thing. Things go a bit too far. Things happen that any normal person would raise more than one eyebrow at, and I think things get a little bit out of control for the band members themselves. The character of Euronymous has a real story arc, and I think much more of a one than actually he had in reality. But the movie is very clearly wanting us to feel an affiliation with him, to follow his arc, to follow his journey, and to follow how things ended up inevitably. So, spoilers from this point onwards, folks. Don't watch if you don't want to know what happened. If you do know the history of the band and what happened, then by all means just keep watching. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts in the comments, guys. So, as I said, we follow Euronymous and the band Mayhem. An awful lot happens in the first half hour of this movie that is shocking in itself. The singer of the band, he had a very difficult time as a young lad. He was badly bullied and he actually did die for a few seconds due to one of these situations within bullying. He has grown up feeling a very personal connection to death and everything that that stands for. On stage, and this is very true, he would cut himself quite deeply with knives and bleed over the audience. They would have severed pigs' heads which would be passed around the audience. This is all very much true. This all did happen. So I felt the scenes where it was setting up, like in the gigs where it was said, I thought that was exceedingly well done. It seemed very real. I've been to a lot of metal gigs, granted not black metal, but I have friends that are into black metal that I have grown up with. I'm aware of the scene. I've been around people that are massively into the scene, and they seem to capture that essence, I felt, very well. Black metal just always wants to go darker, always wants to be one better than speed metal or thrash metal or any of these types of metal. We have other metal depicted within the movie. Inexplicably, we have a party where Dio is playing, and I was really surprised to hear that. Euronymous actually opens, with the help of his family, a record store called Helvet, which actually means hell in Norwegian. And I was really surprised within there to see a copy of Motley Crue. Would he have had that in there? Who knows? But it became a social hub for a lot of people in the black metal scene, and underneath this shop they actually had a basement cellar area. They started a club by the name of the Dark Circle that only very particular members were allowed into. Major spoiler, very early on in this movie we are made aware that Dead is very suicidal. He doesn't seem to care if he lives or dies. He actually seems to seek out death and relish it. He does put a gun to his head at one stage in the movie and asks Euronymous to pull the trigger to kill him. He just does not seem to be frightened of death. And as I say, major spoiler, at one stage in this movie we see Dead's suicide, which is very grisly. It is exceptionally well done. That maybe sounds a very strange thing to say. I have always been very squeamish about knives. I don't like knives. Gunshot wounds don't do to me what knife wounds do, and I have been subject to a armed robbery in the past in a previous workplace where a knife was involved. It was very frightening for me. Maybe that's where it comes from. But Dead actually commits suicide in a very fast, very brutal, very realistic way. He actually, anyone that knows the story will know this, he actually has the vertical cuts on both arms, and he slits his own throat very, very deeply and very realistically in this movie. And not content with that job that he's done, he finishes things by blowing the top of his head off with a shotgun. Right, let's get to the shocking part of this, and we haven't even got to one of the main things at the end. Euronymous was living with Dead at this time. Euronymous comes back and he finds what Dead has left behind. He also actually leaves behind a suicide note. Euronymous is a little bit, he really does not know what to do, but what he does end up doing is quite shocking, and the fact that it is true is toe curling. Again, if you know the history, you will know that Euronymous actually moved Dead's body. He posed it in various ways with the gun and knife in shot, took photographs, actually took the time to go and buy one of those disposable cameras, took photographs of his dead friend, and proceeded to release them as the album cover for the next album. These photographs are available online. I was going to put a snapshot up of that album cover, which features Dead's corpse, to put it bluntly, with his brains blown out. And I thought, possibly not the best idea, so I won't inflict that on you guys, but if you're interested in seeing it, it is available online for you to view. It's a bit of a strange one. It's a bit of a mad move. Euronymous also collects. Now this is rumoured to possibly not be true. Some people say it is, some people say it's not. I have a little snippet here that I'm going to put in. You make up your own mind. Euronymous collected fragments of Dead's skull, made them into necklaces and passed them out amongst the other members of the band, asking them to wear them always. Is that true? Is that not true? Who knows? I'm not too sure myself. So this is the first half hour of this movie. This movie is almost 2 hours long, and all this has happened. I cannot get across to you how fantastic the effects are in this suicide scene. They made me cringe. They made me look away. Absolutely incredible effects. So realistic, so dark, so disturbing. This movie, I said to my husband as I'm watching, the only people that are going to watch this are horror fans or people that have a genuine interest in the band Black Metal or the history of the music. But oh my, you know, even if you have no interest in the music, as a horror fan, that scene in itself was just damn horrific. We move on and one of our other main characters comes in, who ironically actually has the name Christian. In a black metal band, that just made me laugh. He actually self-titles himself Varg. His initial meeting with the band is quite a funny one. He has the stereotypical denim jacket with the metal patches on, one of which is scorpions, you know, that kind of thing. And Euronymous sees it, and that whole music elitism looks down his nose because of the patches that Varg has on there. So Varg sets out, completely reinvents himself. He obviously wants to impress Euronymous. He gets massively into the band Mayhem. He is actually responsible for his own band by the name of Burzum, and the material is something special, and I think Euronymous is actually threatened by that, so agrees to give him a place in Mayhem as the bass player, quite possibly to stop him going on to bigger and better things than Mayhem. But the movie then proceeds. There's going to be all kinds of hate in the comments here. The movie just then proceeds, in my opinion, to be a pissing contest between Euronymous and Varg as to who can be the baddest, who can be the worst, who can one-upmanship the next one. It's like a love-hate relationship there. Varg obviously came from a position of idolising Euronymous and the whole band and the whole concept and culture. It's very much put across in the movie that for Euronymous, it's all fake, it's all about imagery. A lot of what he did and what he put across as being who he is wasn't really who he was inside, but Varg was the complete opposite to that. He came from a position of being just a typical nerdy teen looking up to this band, but he came along and he was willing to do all the things that happened. He was willing to burn the churches to the ground. He was killing animals. He actually is responsible for killing a gay man within one scene in this movie, which is also really upsetting, really realistic, and really disturbing. He is also played out as being quite a grandiose, quite a, for want of a better word, stupid, egotistical person, and I know that the real Varg is not very happy at all with his depiction in this movie. I have read a lot about the case, but not having been a fan at the time, I don't know if the depiction of Varg's persona is correct, whether he actually was this person, but if this was an accurate depiction, the guy just is I'm trying not to swear, honestly. Everything this man does goes from bad to worse. He is made a complete laughingstock by the press, who have him doing all sorts for photo shoots, which is really funny. The basic culmination of this, as we all know that know anything about the history of the band, Varg ends up brutally murdering Euronymous. How this is portrayed is said maybe not to be entirely accurate. Varg will maintain to this day that he heard from another friend that Euronymous had been boasting about wanting to torture and kill him, and he thought, I'm going to get to you before you get to me. He proceeds to drive to his home and brutally murder him. I won't go into loads of detail, but again, that scene is very realistic, very brutal, very disturbing, and very well done, very well acted. The actors in this just get you to, they convey the exact emotion that you're obviously meant to feel. This band had a mad history. There's an awful lot that isn't covered. There's some things that a bit of shine seems to be put on, especially with regards to Euronymous' character. I think to work with an audience, they have tried to make us care about the character, that where we perhaps wouldn't did we know the reality of the real person. There's a lot that's put in the movie, like a girlfriend is invented that didn't actually exist, to show the human side of him, to show empathy, to show compassion, to show feelings, to all of those things that was quite lacking in the rest of the movie from that character. We also see him have a moment of supposed clarity nearing the end of the movie where his girlfriend cuts his hair off. Now, anyone that's been into metal or rock, a guy cutting their long hair off, that just wasn't the done thing. And he cuts his hair off and is in a really tidy button-down shirt, and he's the complete opposite to the character we have seen through the whole movie, and this is how he is when Varg appears to murder him. All of that is completely concocted. He didn't cut his hair, he didn't change his image, he didn't have a girlfriend. The story arc just seems to have been invented in order to make this movie more appealing and more entertaining to the masses. So, that's the story. What did I think about the movie? Okay, I have written down some pros and cons here. So, let me see what I've written. Right, my first issue with the movie is that it's in English. This is a Norwegian band. We're not averse to reading subtitles. I would like to have seen this in Norwegian. It would have felt more authentic. Possibly they wanted the bigger name actors to carry this to get the bigger audience, but I personally would have liked to have seen Norwegian actors. It would have added a bit more authenticity, and I feel it was quite Americanized in a lot of places. We don't need that. I mean, we're very aware that very impressive films come out of America, but you know, in Europe there are some cracking movies out there. I could have done with a little less of polish and sheen that was on it. Second point I've already actually mentioned was the creation of story arcs that didn't exist. The invention, her name was Anne Marit, a photographer who was Euronymous' girlfriend, didn't exist, didn't see the point of inventing things like that. That was a bit off-putting. There's a lot of people saying an awful lot of what took place in the movie is not true. People are misrepresented. Whether that is or is not the case is not for me to say. But what I will say is, this movie, if you go into this wanting to see a documentary that's entirely accurate as to everything that happened, that's not what you're going to see. If you go into this wanting to see a really interesting movie with a bit of an idea about the black metal culture, although it doesn't go into depth on that at all, I must say, this movie is totally emphasised on what happened in the background of that band. The concentration is on the suicide death of Dead, of Varg's just change of character, the murder that he committed, the churches that he burnt down, and obviously it culminates in Euronymous' death at Varg's hand. If this was just a movie about black metal, a lot of people's not going to go watch that. A lot of criticism has been put on the fact there's not enough about the scene, but this movie would not have been made had it not been about what happened behind the scenes. So obviously the emphasis is going to be on that, because it's out of this world what happened. It's just so... You would think, surely that couldn't have happened. The stuff that actually is true in this movie are the big things, are the things that did happen. I can't criticise this movie because of the subject matter. The subject matter that we concentrated on is what people want to know. It is the story that people want to hear. So I can't say, oh, I would have liked to have seen more about the scene, I would have liked to have seen more about the band and the music. The stuff that we want to see is the horrific stuff, is the brutal stuff, is the scary stuff, and that's what this movie concentrates on, and to me, it does that very, very well. So on to the pros. The first off, I'm going to say the effects in here, the blood effects, the gore effects are incredible. Very realistic. They're not overplayed, but they're realistic, they're not dumbed down. And it's right in your face, it's not cut away. It's disturbing stuff, guys. It's hard to watch at times, but it just made everything seem all that more authentic. The acting in this by everyone concerned is very, very good. Dead in places perhaps seems a little bit sterile, a little bit, but then again, maybe that was his personality. Maybe he was a bit closed off as an individual. But Rory Culkin as Euronymous is incredible, and Emery Cohen as Varg, those two actors did an incredible job. I have watched interviews, footage, looked at photographs since watching this, and I feel that they conveyed the band, the chemistry, the personalities very, very well. I also liked the elements of pop culture introduced in this that put us in the place, that help us relate, like movies that they're watching on telly, like posters in the background, like album covers in the shop. If you knew anything about the era, if you were into horror or metal at that time, it puts you right into the middle of that, and it helps you relate to everything that's going on. So yeah, for me, I have to say I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I do understand people's criticisms that are more heavily into the black metal scene, but if you want to watch a movie that is mostly true, put it this way, the big parts are true. The parts that you find disturbing and difficult are true. This is just a really interesting story, a disturbing, dark, unsettling story, and I feel that it got the mood just right. I can now watch other people's reviews on this. I haven't as yet, as I didn't want to dilute what I thought. I didn't want to sort of like take on board other people's viewpoints and opinions. Maybe upon watching other people's opinions, things will make me think, well, perhaps. But this is just my opinion, what I think after having watched it last night. So have you watched it? What did you think if you have? If you haven't seen it as yet, but you do know the story of Mayhem, is it something you want to see? Have you been reading any of the criticisms? What's your viewpoints on that? I'd be really interested in getting a discussion going below in the comments. If you haven't seen it and don't know the story, why are you still here? Why have you allowed me to spoil this entire movie for you? But I will say, even if you now know the story, watch the movie. It is well worth watching. I think it's incredibly well put together. I know some people will be disappointed by this, and I understand that, but just coming from a point of a movie that was inspired by a true story rather than completely representative of a true story, then check this out. I honestly do not feel that many horror fans will be disappointed by this. What I'm going to do before I sign off, I'm going to go downstairs and I'm going to very briefly ask my husband what he thought. Bang it on the end here. My husband as a teenager was very much into that whole speed metal, black metal. Something I found really funny in this was the real put down about Swedish rock, Swedish metal, Swedish speed. Like everybody was all about partying and having fun. Coincidentally, didn't think about this, I'm wearing a Backyard Babies top. Backyard Babies are Swedish. They're a sleaze punk band. They're my favourite band. So yeah, I bet Mayhem hated the hell out of them. So I'm going to go downstairs, I'm going to ask my husband's opinion. He comes from a slightly more educated viewpoint about the whole subject to me, and I will end on that for you guys. So thanks for watching. Let me know your viewpoints in the comments. Look forward to speaking to you next time. Right, I said I would end with my husband's opinion. There's Molly's going to give you her opinion as well. She's had her chihuahua cut. Yeah. So what did you think overall of Lords of Chaos?
I've got two views on it.
Right.
If it was a film that was completely fiction, it would have been alright.
Yeah.
But because it was supposed to be based on fact and it wasn't at all factual, a bit of a letdown, to be honest.
You think?
Yeah. I enjoyed it.
We disagree.
But I had to see it from a point of view, try to make out that it...
Sorry about
I
the
led myself
wobbling.
to believe it was fiction to enjoy it.
But what I found was the big bits, the bits that people are... Sorry about Isaac coughing. The parts that people want to see. The suicide.
And the stabbing.
The stabbing. And the people...
It was very good stabbing.
And the church... I've said the effects were incredible.
Yeah.
A lot of the background stuff's been filled in and hasn't been entirely accurate. But the big main things that are the pull of the movie are true.
And the other thing for the pull of the movie, if you're a fan, where was all the music?
So there's two viewpoints. There's people that are watching it for just a movie and saying it was really good, and there are people that want it to be accurate, and it's not entirely accurate. So we agree with that.